there was a couple like renowned like spinal surgeons who reached out to me. They had gotten wind that I wasn't going to get surgery, and they ripped me a new one. They're like, "You're foolish for thinking that. You have no idea the risk you're putting yourself through." So I really felt good that I listened to my body.
Welcome to Fuel In Sessions. I'm your host, Scott Tyndall, and today joined by a professional athlete, a coach, and a bloody good bloke, Nicholas Chase. Nick unfortunately suffered a hip fracture when coming off his bike, hitting some debris in late August 2025. Fractured his hip, and we set in motion a cascade of interventions to maximize and optimize his recovery. This went from the immediate to the intermediate to the late stage progression. In amongst all this, the utmost importance was placed on nutrition to maximize his recovery, early stage rehabilitation, and return to play objective markers along the way, and how we manage the mindset. So it's a great chat. It's a great review of a case study of an injury managed well. It was accelerated rehabilitation. He ate a hell of a lot. He trained a lot, even with the injury. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this entertaining chat, and you'll get a lot out of it. Nick, how you doing, mate?
Thanks, man. Being a legend, I don't know if that just means I'm getting old or I've been around too long, but I appreciate the welcome intro, buddy.
Well, it's a bit of all of the above, isn't it? You've been around for a while and you're a bloody good bloke. So, you know, I thought it was worthwhile getting you on the show. I can't remember. Is this your debut? I think it is your debut.
Yeah, you've been on our podcast, I think 3 or 4 times. And, you know, I think we've always just, we'll do it on ours. And now you're bringing me on. So it's really fun. Thanks.
No, mate, it's probably long overdue. And the reason for this, it is a very important episode because back last year, the end of last year, you unfortunately suffered a fracture, a broken hip that was the result of, I guess, an accident. And, I was doom scrolling, as you do, on Instagram, and you being quite prolific on Instagram, I suddenly saw this busted up figure of Nicholas Chase, and I thought, oh, shit, what's happened here? Mate, what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I did get a couple of questions like, why did you feel the need to just like, after you were up off the ground, to just tell the story? I was like, I don't know. I guess it's just wired in me to share it. But it was one of those days where you've probably been digging a pretty deep hole in terms of fatigue, and the racing season had been piling up. It was mid-August, and I'd just come back from Roth and trips and and Boise 70.3. So I was a bit foggy, to be honest. And I even kind of knew that morning when I started the ride, I was like, let's just see what happens. I know I'm not showing up at my best. And within, I think, 13 or 16 minutes of the ride, I was going through a typical patch of debris as you would on the side of the road, no big deal. And then I just clipped a tiny little piece of wood, and I was going 36 miles an hour, and I took all of that impact directly onto my left hip. And the second that I went down, I knew that was it. Like, I was like, maybe it's dislocated. I hit it so hard, but I didn't know I could crack it all the way through, bud. It's crazy.
Mate, there's something about coming off the bike that just terrifies me. It's probably why I ride like so slow. But you being you, the fact that you bounced up and had the ability to actually share your stories probably speaks volumes of your pain tolerance as well. I think, my initial thought with this was like, okay, he's had an impact. He's potentially broken his hip. Is the fall as a result of potentially low bone mineral density? And we'll get into that in a minute. Look, I reached out pretty quick and I said, mate, let's put in place an action plan, because your recovery and making sure it is expedited and optimized is super important for you as a career in terms of being a professional triathlete. But also as a coach and looking after a lot of other athletes. So I want to review the process of what we put in place. The biggest reason for this is I'm actually so sick of athletes getting injured and then going, oh yeah, I don't need to worry about my nutrition. And again, I just say this over and over again. I'm like, your nutrition is probably the one of, if not the most important aspect of your rehabilitation and your recovery, especially in the early stages. And so I just want to go through what we did in terms of the immediate, the intermediate, and then sort of the final phases, and how we broke that down when we had these discussions and how we utilized fuel in along the way. So you good with that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm an open book.
Okay, so immediate plan, we jumped on, and I wanted to know immediately what was the imaging. So what exactly had you fractured?
So it was let me see if I can remember. It feels like it was like not that long ago, but it kind of was. I think it was the top of the lower trochanter. Like it wasn't quite the neck or the ball. It was right where it starts to hit the big mass of your pelvis. So it was right at the top. If you were to roll along your hip right now and you feel that little jolt kind of sticking out, that was the impact point, and it went all the way through to the other side. So it was a full, I don't know, a full break, I guess.
Yeah, full fracture. It went through the cortical aspect,
but it did not displace. Correct. So luckily for me, no displacement, and I don't know how. Maybe it's because strong muscles, strong everything holding it all together. Hopefully.
Strong bones in the end.
Yeah, strong bones. And we did do that was one of the first things we had discussed is like, when you can, let's get some DEXA scan. And that's really easy for me to do at the local college. So we did all that stuff. That was really helpful.
Yeah. And so the surgeon said to you, okay, you fractured the top of your hip or the femur, no displacement. So the option was you could did he provide you with an option for surgery?
Yeah, I mean, that's their job. I mean, the first thing they were like is let's put some hardware in you, buddy. And I was like, is it absolutely mandatory that, because I've got friends who've had hip fractures and they've had surgery, and some of them actually need it, especially if you fracture the neck. There's a lot of risk. That was the most important thing. There's a lot of blood flow that goes through there. If I was to not get surgery, which I opted not to, their worry was I would re-injure it by movement or being a little bit overzealous in my recovery, and that would cause a lot more further damage, a surgery that would be way more invasive, and then possible loss of blood flow to that area, which could be necrosis and really terrible. So they wanted to do surgery, and I was like, let's not. And like I left that place with nothing on me, just a leg that's totally broken. And I went home and sat on the couch. There was no bracing, nothing. It was crazy.
And I remember speaking to you, and that's when we had that conversation. It was after they'd done the initial imaging. You'd had the conversation. You decided, right, we're not going to do surgery. And so we were like, okay, well, that's the decision that's been made. What can we put in place at this point in time to ensure the recovery is maximized or optimized? So things I asked about were your bloods. I wanted to know what your vitamin D status was, because we know that low vitamin D status can actually delay healing. Certainly, we've seen some recent research looking at adolescents and fractures. I know you're not an adolescent, but you can take some of that information. That's a most recent study, but we can look at other studies in relation to vitamin D status and bone healing. And we know that having optimized vitamin D status is important. The other thing that I actually, because we were chatting and I was, talking to you about what have you been doing? And you said to me, I'm drinking heaps of bone broth. And it was something that I actually sort of went, ooh. And the reason I went, ooh, is because you were drinking it on a daily basis and drinking quite a lot. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with consuming bone broth, especially ad hoc, a few times a week. But when you're drinking it on a daily basis, there is some evidence to suggest that heavy metals, in particular lead, can be overconsumed as a result of excessive bone broth consumption. So I did talk to you about getting a heavy metal screen, and lead in particular, and also just cutting back on the bone broth consumption, and then us talking about, using some other supplements to try and accelerate that, which again, I'll touch on in a second. So they were the sort of blood test things that we wanted to check. Obviously, your full CBC, your biochemistry, your iron status, everything that we would normally do. We got that all checked, but they were the two important factors at this point in time. So from a food and nutrition and calories perspective, I think the biggest thing I said to you, mate, was it's not a time to cut calories. And you were like, I remember you were like, really? Shouldn't I be like dropping this down? And I was like, nah, let's talk about why. And I remember saying specifically to you, let's feed the injury. Let's feed the injury. And you're like, okay, what does that mean? I was explaining, because in those early days after a fracture or a major injury, you're actually going to have an increase in resting metabolic rate. And that resting metabolic rate is going up because the body is trying to heal itself. If you go and starve yourself or start to reduce calories, then that's going to have a negative impact on that healing process. When I said that to you, was that a surprise?
Not really. I knew that I was going to be hungry. I was still going to have the metabolism of an athlete. It wasn't just going to shut off. But I knew, most importantly, everything I was eating needed to have a lot more value. It couldn't just be the quick rocket fuel that I was so used to just consuming because I was always on the move and burning nonstop. I needed to really get the heavy dose of all the vegetables, the bright, vibrant colors, and still not avoid carbs. Like it was great. And there was the one time in my entire life I was like, maybe this is just when I lose my abs. Maybe this is when it happens. It's finally now. And that was in the back of my mind. But yeah, it never happened. Still good.
No, it never did. So what we did effectively, and just again to give context around this, so with Nick's Fuel In program, what we did is I asked him to strip out the 20 plus hours of training that he had planned. He had Chattanooga, I think at the time, was a planned race as well coming up. So we removed all that. And what we did was actually move his current weight to the same as his goal weight. In doing that, it moves him into what we call a maintenance calorie program or an energy balance program. And then on top of that, what I did was apply an extra 500 calories per day. And this was for the first week. Okay. So we had him in an energy balance and then applied an extra 500 calories per day, which was split across protein, fat, and carbohydrates. And this was just to get him up into what I estimated as a caloric surplus, and making sure that he just had those extra calories on top to ensure that he was, not starving the injury. So his first week actually was full of green days despite no training. And a lot of athletes would probably see this and think, oh my God, why am I eating so much food? Why am I consuming so much energy or so many calories? The reason was simply to allow his body to heal in a maximal perspective. And we didn't want to go low carb. And I think that's the biggest mistake a lot of athletes will make, is that they say, oh, look, I'm not doing anything. I need to go low carb here. And actually at that point in time, I remember saying to you as well, Nick, like actually carbs are going to help with bone mineral markers. They're going to help with the formation of bone, because osteoblasts, or the cells that put down the bone, they actually utilize carbohydrates. And we know if we restrict carbohydrates, the activity of those little cells that put down the bone, they're reduced. So saying to you, hey, don't worry about your abs. Let's worry about your bone. Let's get the carbs in. You were like, okay, I'm on it. And you were very good. You took to it like a duck to water. You were like, okay, if I've got to eat, I got to eat.
I think I'm not an anomaly in terms of this stuff, but I just quickly can accept and make a pivot at any moment. I've just gotten used to that in my life. My time in the US military and growing up as a kid and just bouncing around different families, like I legitimately can turn a corner and change the whole career path if I had to on a day. So my mission at that point was recovery. As an athlete, like I just wasn't stressed. I didn't have a bad day on the couch chilling and recovering, because not only was the outreach and support, having calls with you every week and making sure we were supplementing, it was like a new experiment, a new project for me. And so I really believe like the mindset that we brought into this was tactical. It was full of discipline. And honestly, like I did not have a day where I was sad about not being able to do what I have been doing for like 15 years. It was like the biggest break I've ever had. I mean, both ways, break of training as well. So, and plus like people were cooking for me all the time. I was really nutritionally loaded. I just have never been in such a great space to just learn. And I really use this as an opportunity to learn. And it kind of like launched some critical phases of my career now, and also some things I wanted to do with our team. So honestly, like the nutritional stuff that you used for me, and Fuel In itself, like I think we should talk about how using Fuel In during this process, even when I wasn't training, the app itself, just to kind of help me stay on top of it, was good. I want to talk about that at some point.
Yeah, for sure. And we can. And look, your mindset, I think, was, and I remember talking very early on about your mindset as well. And you've obviously got a very positive outlook on life in general. Yet we did discuss that. It's like, okay, this is an opportunity to potentially work on the things that maybe are weaknesses or perceived weaknesses whilst you're recovering from the injury. And what we said was, and this is to do certainly with the intermediate phase of, treat the athlete, not the injury. And what I mean by that is there is lots that an athlete can do, even when injured, that allows them to still train. And that certainly came into action as we approach that intermediate phase. So before we get into that, I just want to stay on the immediate action plan. So we did at least 10 days of this higher sort of calorie phase, lots of green days, extra 500 calories. And then 10 days later, we started to see a lot more yellow days. So yellow days, just for those who don't use Fuel In, is somewhere between 1.8 and 4 grams per kilo of carbs. You had an average of around 4 grams per kilo at this stage. This was from late September. The injury was on, early September. The injury was on the 22nd of August. So 10 days later, early September through to September 22nd, which was around 4 weeks, you had this average of 4 grams per kilo. Protein was kept very high. We kept you at around 2.4, 2.5 grams per kilo, and your fat was sitting at around 1 gram per kilo at this stage. The assumption was that your resting energy expenditure as well initially goes up and then starts to reduce. That makes sense because you're actually, as you said, you were on the couch for a long time. And we had to structure that into the plan as well, and accept that there was going to be some reduced energy expenditure in those initial periods, and we need to factor that into the calorie equation. I did say to you that I wanted you to track, and the reason I wanted you to track within Fuel In was to ensure you were hitting your targets. How did you feel about tracking at that point in time?
Well, I didn't have a whole lot going on, Scott, so it was really easy. And I was just had the app, had the food, and with how easy it is with the app to log and calculate, I didn't have to navigate any training. I just had to make sure that the calories were adding up and I was getting close. And even if I went over on the day, I wasn't stressed. We just had a pretty good ballpark, and that was pretty much it. It made it really easy.
Yeah, I remember that. And then back to what you said there, it was like an opportunity for you to sort of re-engage with all the whole foods first and foremost. So we said, like, you're going to eat a hell of a lot of vegetables. You're going to eat the rainbow. You're going to have at least 2 pieces of fruit every day. Just really basic stuff, but it was just getting back in touch with like all the goodness of food. And I think you made some comments around like, and something that you routinely see with athletes is that they make this mistake. They overcomplicate things. They don't get in touch with food, and actually getting back in touch with food is probably the easiest way to sort out your nutrition. Can you just explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I do love to cook, so I've never really had a relationship that's tenuous with food. I think that the hardest thing for endurance athletes is to time it well enough before, during, and after a busy and hectic lifestyle. And so what it did for me during this period of time was it brought back a lot of those things that I had forgotten a lot about, in terms of what do I really like to eat? Because I kind of think I was eating like the same meals throughout the whole week, just a kind of routine platform. And I think diversity of your nutrition, diversity of the meals, even the type of cuisine, like that has got to be part of an athlete's palate, because it gets boring and your body gets used to it, and then you're not craving these things, and then your hunger urges are a little bit less. So when you're not eating as frequently and you're on the couch a lot, you kind of have to be creative and really enjoy every meal, because it's like the only thing you got to look forward to every day. So I really appreciated those who made food for me. And we're like, it's funny enough, like one of our sports dietitians is our next door neighbor. So we had good meals coming in. There was like a sign up sheet for people who were cooking for me for 2 weeks. Like my wife didn't have to worry about it. She was just doing breakfast and stuff. But yeah, I think the connection with food and my love of exploring the types of food that make a big impact, especially calorically, that was super fun. And I've even continued that. Like I just bought another cookbook the other day. So I'm all about it.
Yeah, it's sort of like you want variety, especially in those early days where, as you say, you're a little bit bored. You don't have much to do. You're stuck on a couch. Look, I'm sure most people listening to this have been in that situation where they've had a major injury or a major illness, and it's like, oh, I'm bed bound or I'm couch bound. And so you do have to find some time to occupy, and reading books and, things like that obviously is enjoyable. But then, as you said, the food aspect, you can really re-engage with it. And you don't have to mix it up to the point where you're cooking gourmet meals every day. It can be once a week, just a simple like, okay, I'm going to try this recipe this week. And that sort of, even just doing that can sort of ignite that fire within you, I think, to sort of get the cooking bug back in.
Even stuff that's easy. Like I forgot about yogurt and granola, like in fruit, like parfaits, like those are awesome. Like, and I forgot how easy they are and transportable, and how they don't take a lot of time and energy. So those types of things, people just, if you're listening, there are little hacks, you might even call them now, because they're there for you. You just got to mix it up.
It was interesting because during that phase, we were working on the Smart Meals feature in the background, and a little bit of inspiration, actually, I will give to you, because it was like, okay, well, I also want to make things as easy as possible for athletes when they do have situations like yours where they're completely, out of luck. They're on their ass and they're thinking, okay, I want to eat something, but I don't know where to get the inspiration. And it was like, that Smart Meals feature, which I know you're a big fan of, now to be able to just either hit, coach recommendations or, I've got this food, give me 3 options what I can cook. It does make it a little bit fun. And you're sort of like, oh, I hadn't thought about mixing those ingredients in those ways. And, I'm going to give that meal a go.
It is funny too. I had an athlete we've got signed up on Fuel, and he texted me just like a week ago, and he's like, your waffles are delicious, by the way. And I was like, what do you mean? And I didn't know you all had made my recipe for my waffles a standard recipe in there. So like,
that's off. The Nick Chase, I think they're called Nick Chase Awesome Waffles or something.
No, they're called like world famous waffles or something like that. And I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, they are now.
Yeah, but you gotta bring a little bit of fun there. So I like bringing in. We've got like Nick's waffles. We've got Jan's goat curry. We've got some of Daniella's recipes in there. Like, I think I'm all for it, bringing in more and more of the athletes. That people aspire and are inspired by. I think having the food that you eat in Fuel In is super cool, that they can go, I ate Nick Chase's waffles today for morning and talk about it. I think it's another form of using food and athletes as inspiration on a daily basis. That's what we're all about. Let's keep the focus on what we did in the early stage. So obviously fruits, vegetables, layering in other carbs like starchy carbs, breads and legumes and other root vegetables to hit your total carb amounts. Your protein intake was high. We talked about calcium intake. So I wanted you to be purposeful with drinking milk, eating yogurt, some cheese, small fish. But then we also said, let's take a dietary calcium tablet just to ensure that you were getting at least 2,000 milligrams of calcium in those early stages. And And then the other thing was reducing bone broth, not eliminating it, but just reducing it to a couple of times a week. Supplements. Everyone loves a good talk about supplements. So in the early stages, what we talked about was, okay, supplements are going to be complementing your nutrition and your energy intake. We talked about a few things like chondroitin sulfate, or the product by Pillar Performance, Miller, Motion Armor. You went with, which one did you go with out of those two?
I had the Motion Armor and the chondroitin sulfate. Like anything that you recommended, I ended up getting my hands on at some point. So I had nothing else to do but research and buy stuff.
Yeah. So look, the Motion Armor is really interesting. It contains some chondroitin sulfate, but it also has this eggshell membrane. Talking to Damien Fitzpatrick and Jan during his recovery from his hip injury, that was one of the supplements. And again, I'm not going to hang my hat on it, but there certainly doesn't appear to be any harm from taking that product. And, with you, obviously we've had a very good outcome. It may have played a role in that. Other supplements that we talked about, we did get you taking collagen 20 grams a day on the days you weren't drinking bone broth, and consuming that with vitamin C. We did look at a product, the momentous shots. Did you go with the momentous shots, or which pillar which collagen did you go with?
They were running some sort of a promotion for influencers. So I just grabbed those and started using them. It was great. So yeah, the momentous shots were super easy. Just a little collagen pack flavored with berry, tasted good, went down easy.
Yeah, look, I hadn't actually seen them before, and I saw them and I was like, oh, well, that's going to be super convenient. And I think convenience is a big part of any nutrition program because it makes it practical. And if you're consistent with anything, it tends to have a very positive effect. So went with the collagen shots there. Omega-3s, we wanted you taking at least 3,000 milligrams a day just to dampen any of that systemic inflammation. I think, again, you were using the Pillar Omega-3s for that. And then on top of that, we had, just to supplement your protein intake, just to bump up the total protein, you were using a whey protein isolate on top of your daily intake of other animal proteins.
There's some vitamin D in there as well.
Yes, correct. So we wanted to, before getting your vitamin D status, we just wanted to ensure, look, let's get you taking 5,000 IU per day, Monday to Friday. So you're taking 25,000 IU of vitamin D until we got your results. The way we looked at that was, it's not going to cause any toxicity or anything like that. It's certainly going to shore up that you are taking an optimal amount of vitamin D. And then once we had your vitamin D status, we could then either ramp that up to 10,000 IU a day for 5 days a week, or drop it down to potentially 2,000 IU per day based on your status. The other thing that we talked about in the immediate phase was what we call blood flow restriction. And this was something you were unaware of?
No, I actually told you I could do it.
Oh, you did? That's right. Sorry. So you were like, you had the bands at the time, didn't you?
Yeah.
And so you used a product, and I say this because a friend of mine just had a very nasty fracture. He fractured his lower leg in 19 places the other day. Shout out to Angus Wright, mate. I hope you're recovering well. He has a lot of metal work in his lower leg right now. But I was talking to him about blood flow restriction. He seemed a little skeptical, probably because I was talking to him. And he's like, come on, mate. But like all good friends, they never believe anything you've got to say, even if you are perceived as somewhat of an expert in the area. But I explained to him that we'd used blood flow restriction. We used it at Oracle Team USA. We used it at the Toronto Maple Leafs, and to great effect. And so you were familiar with blood flow restriction. Are you happy to just give your experience with blood flow restriction?
No problem. As a coach, I've had the honor to coach a lot of athletes, some of which have been pilots. And I've even had them well in the cockpit do some BFRs type squats just to maintain some of that muscle density when they just can't do anything. And for me, I knew, and Scott, you passed on some great research as well. Once we kind of went into all that, I knew that I could just sit on the couch on my good leg. We could put a cuff on. I was using smart cuffs. I could measure the occlusion properly, and we could just do a couple of minutes at a time with occlusion. And that stress takes to the other leg as well. The body doesn't really have a line drawn down the center. It's not just going to send everything to one leg. It's going to kind of divvy it up amongst both. So we just knew that we'd seen research that you could maintain like 15% of that on the damaged appendage by using 100% of it on the healthy appendage. So overall, it ended up working really great for me.
Yeah, so just so people are aware, with blood flow restriction, there's a few. The reason we might use it, and certainly we do use it in recovery, is that it can be used to stave off muscular atrophy and actually help retain lean mass when there are periods of immobilization or periods of inactivity. So what we talked about here, and it's not full occlusion, so it's not a tourniquet. It's a passive. It's around 30% occlusion of systemic blood pressure. And the cuffs that Nick has, it actually does the measurement for you, and it works out exactly what that occlusion pressure is. So in the early stages, and some of the studies that have been done on this is in intensive care, where they use 10 minutes per day, and they'll apply it generally to both legs, even the impacted leg. And they will occlude the leg for 10 minutes passively, especially in the start. And that's what I talked about to Nick about. So just applying these blood pressure cuffs to both legs and having 10 minutes of occlusion at least once a day. I believe after a few days, you were like, well, I'm just going to do it twice a day. You sort of took the Shawshank Redemption approach of not just one letter, but let's do 2 letters every day. And so,
right.
And I was quite comfortable with that. I think there's certainly no research to say that 2 is better than 1 in terms of 1 10-minute versus 2 10-minute sessions, but there's also no research to say that it doesn't actually accelerate or improve the retention of lean mass. And again, in the experience with you, I think it was very positive because it started to act on, can we reduce the amount of lean mass that you're losing whilst you're in an incapacitated state? And so blood flow restriction, I would say, in combination with optimized nutrition, is one tactic in the immediate stage after a catastrophic or a major injury. I would certainly advocate the use of, obviously under the guidance of a practitioner initially, unless you're experienced with it. So that was the immediate stage. Was there anything else, Nick, in the immediate stage that you want to sort of, recap on or mention that we might have missed?
I think that was it. Like just a whole lot of building the plan that we knew was going to be successful for the next 6 to 8 months. So that's really the immediate, was like, let's get smart. Let's put all the tools on the table. Let's figure out which ones we're going to use straight away, which ones we're going to progress with. And, that takes us to the intermediate. So I think everything was pretty dialed in there.
Yeah, it was good. So at what stage did you go back to the surgeon? Because I know you went back several times. What was your next meeting, and what were the investigations that they did?
I think the next week, the week after the injury, I think we had to go back to, because they were really concerned about any level of displacement. So we did a CT scan and an X-ray initially, and then we just went to X-rays straight after that. And then I had to get an MRI on my shoulder because there was a secondary impact that I was worried about, which that came back clear also. So no issues. And then every 2 weeks, and for I think probably 2 or 3 months, we had an X-ray every 2 weeks just to make sure we were seeing that thick black line start to get a little bit light gray and then white and then start to fill in. So that was a frequency.
Yeah, and I remember discussing this, that sometimes I think the big thing was they didn't want to see in displacement. And sometimes the X-ray can be a little bit misleading, especially with that cortical sort of formation. And it's always going to be a little bit delayed in relation to the imaging, and that it won't always give the full picture. But I think what the surgeon was looking for was, because he knew that you were going to be aggressive with your rehabilitation, just wanted to ensure that it didn't move and there wasn't any sort of malalignment in that. We also did a DEXA scan in that period of time because I wanted to know, was the impact from the fall, was it was there some sort of predisposition to having weaker bones that led to the fracture? The good news was, mate, you're strong like bull.
Yep.
A BMD of, I think, +1 in terms of your T score, which for anyone listening, anything over 0 is good. A T score of +1 puts him in an excellent area or zone for his gender and also his age group. If you're looking at the reverse, if there was a score of -1, he starts to be in an osteopenic range, and a score of -2 is osteoporotic. So we knew at that stage that actually Nick's bones were very good, and unfortunately it was because of a trauma just simply coming off the bike that he was unfortunate to actually get this fracture. So that for me was a big plus as well. It was like, okay, we're not dealing with underlying pathology here. It was simply because you came off your bike and couldn't ride.
Yep, came off. Yeah, my bike handling skills are obviously not very good. I couldn't have stopped that mid-air crash.
Yeah,
Right.
We got your bloods back. Your vitamin D status was good. I recall it was something like 65 milligrams per deciliter, which is right bang on where we want an athlete, sort of around that 60 to 70. So I think we kept you on the 5,000 IU. Because it was coming into the winter months, and we said, okay, you are not going to be going outside. You're not going to be exposed to sunlight after October in the Northern Hemisphere. We knew that was going to come off. So we wanted to keep you there, and we said, okay, we'll just monitor the vitamin D status. So you stayed on the 5,000 IU. I believe you were using Thorn. Is that correct? Thorn or
Yes.
Momentous? Thorn.
Thorn.
The reason you use Thorn was because it's NSF Sport and tested, and it's just very easy in the 5,000 IU tablets. So that was very easy. The other thing that I really started to talk to you about in the intermediate stage was weight monitoring. The reason I said this, and a lot of people might be surprised by this, it wasn't for you to lose weight, because anyone who knows you knows that you do not need to lose weight. For me, my concern was you were going to lose weight, and actually we needed to make sure that you weren't losing weight along the way. And so it's a play. Again, a lot of people can get sensitive around weight monitoring. It's the way in which you approach this and the logic around what we were trying to do. The monitoring of Nick's weight was purely to ensure that he either maintained weight or gained some weight at this point in time. Have you ever had problems with weighing yourself, or like at that point in time, were you worried about it?
At this point in time in my life, no, that ship has sailed, but probably 6-7 years ago when I was first starting the sport, and I did have about another 20 pounds of lean body mass to lose because I came from a bit of a powerlifting background, and I was trying to bit as fast as I could in this sport. And I know muscle is, upper body muscle especially wasn't helping me. So yeah, I did all the diets. I did everything to try to see what my life would be like for 6 months at a time. And I actually messed up some of my thyroid during some of the lower carb vegetarian type approaches. So anyways, I had some, binge periods of my food relationship where I wasn't super healthy, but I really did a lot of research. I got real with myself, and I held myself accountable to the book that kind of changed my perspective on everything dietary related was Matt Fitzgerald, Diet Cults. It changed my whole perspective on all the diet cult type stuff I was actually doing. So I highly recommend that if you feel like you're on an all or nothing approach with diet and you're kind of spiraling. So this period of my life, great relationship with food and weight. I don't hop on a scale, but for this particular experience, I knew that we needed to maintain weight. So I had no problem getting on the scale.
Yeah, it's interesting. And shout out to Matt for that book. I think it is excellent. And I think anything that really sort of, I don't want to say shames diets, but definitely makes people aware of diets and the issues with them, as opposed to focusing on nutrition and the principles of a good nutrition program, or I won't even say good, a nutrition program that is built specifically around what it is you're trying to achieve, is a far better approach. And that's certainly the approach we'll take at Fuel In. There's no diet. It's not a fad. It's just, this is the amount of protein you need to support athletic performance and recovery. This is the amount of fat that you're going to require in line with what you're trying to do with body composition and total energy requirements. And this is your carb amount. If you want to do a hell of a lot of training with a hell of a lot of volume and a hell of a lot of intensity, well, you're just going to need carbs.
Yep.
Forget the whole notion of good and bad. You're actually just going to need a lot of carbs and you're going to need a lot of energy. And there is no good or bad. Yes, there's better quality in terms of, things like fiber and micronutrients, but it's not good or bad. Like, I'm not going to call sugar bad because you know what, Nick? When you're out there and you're pushing 280 watts, sugar's your best friend.
Yeah.
Broccoli at that point in time ain't no help.
Yeah. There's a lot of bad mindsets. There's not like a lot of bad eating habits, but I'd say for sure the term that I still carry around with me is healthy agnostic eating. Like that's how he summed it up in the book. And it's kind of, you can't go wrong if you think that way.
Yeah, I agree. It's you just look at the principles, from a top down perspective or a bottom up, whichever way you want to approach it. But yeah, what are the principles that we know confer health and then also confer performance? Bring those two together and then you're in a great place. And that's certainly what we believe at Fuel In. So let's talk about that nutrition. So September 22nd, about a month after, 4 weeks afterwards, we start to see a decent amount of volume starting to creep into your plan. Now, as we said, let's treat the athlete. Let's not treat the injury. And we had a good conversation about that. Everything you could be doing in relation to rehabilitation, but also ensuring that you stay fit. So 10 hours plus training and rehab. We started to see those yellow days transforming into green days with an average of around just under 3,500 calories a day. This is 4 weeks after a hip fracture. What was your take on that?
I mean, it was pretty
Happy
fast.
days?
It was great. I think the hardest part, after my muscle spasms had calmed down and my right leg was doing all of the heavy lifting and we'll talk about that eventually too. But I was in the pool. The first thing I could do and would do was get into the pool and just float, let the blood go. And then after if I look back at my training peaks, I look at the 30th of August, then the 6th of September, I got in that little handy dandy chair that lowers you into the pool. And I just floated around for the first time. And I was like, this is paradise. And then the next week I got in there and I was like, hey, I think I could probably use my upper body. There's no legs going on there. And then I did some laps and then I strapped my ankles together and had a pull buoy on. And then I finally was like, I think I feel enough stability in my body, my core to do a flip turn. And I just sent it. I just listened to my body. I took on all of the approaches. I started, eating more and more. And it was just a great experience to just have all the support and the knowledge, the data, the supplements. And it didn't take long for me. I think it was 22 September. I've got had an actually planned week with like intervals and stuff like that. So not too, a month later.
That was the first week. That was the first week where you really had 10 plus hours structured training. So let's get into that exactly. And you've already touched on it. I remember, let's talk about swimming. So we talked about this and I remember saying to you, you can get in the water, talk to you, obviously, and then let's give some credit. You had physiotherapist working with you at the time?
No, I had was an orthopedic doctor. Every time I'd go in and he'd be like, I don't want you doing any of that stuff. And I'd be like, all right, I'll just do only a little bit of it then.
I was acting as your virtual physio as well, putting on my physiotherapy hat at the time. And I remember talking to you going, mate, I've seen plenty of these. We've rehabbed them back. Just respect the injury as well. Don't overdo it. And we will get to where that actually happened a little bit. But we said, right, if you get in the pool, let's strap your legs together. Let's use a buoy because you can swim with your upper body. And you were like, perfect. And I love the notion as well for what can I do, not what can't I do? Yes, there will be some limitations, but you were like, what can I do? And I was like, okay, well, you can get in the pool and you can swim as long as you don't use your legs. Bang. Okay. Obviously within reason. So that was one thing. In the pool, felt great. Weights training. We said you can do upper body. As long as you get someone to pass you the weights and you're sitting down or you're lying down, got no problem with that. You can use your other leg. you can start to work the hell out of the other leg because there is some contralateral, some crossover from good leg to bad leg. And again, in terms of lean mass retention, as you described. How many days a week were you lifting weights at this point?
I think we had 4 days. Some BFR every other day, just blood flow restriction on the good leg. So I would do some, like split squat type things or balance with occlusion, usually about 15% occlusion for a set of reps. And so blood flow restriction. The other days were just, some light planks or some reverse planks, anything core, shoulders related, I could keep that going.
Yeah. And all that, again, with the blood flow restriction, the weights training, there was plenty of stuff that you could be doing. We talked about single leg cycling and getting you just, resting your affected leg in the middle on like an exercise bike and just using that right leg. Did you do that with the blood flow restriction on the good leg?
I did when I came back, but it was a while until I was only doing swimming and some of the strength work for a while. And it wasn't until I came back from Kona, because remember, I went to Kona with a cane and I came back from Kona without a cane. I was full weight bearing after that.
Well, let's talk about that. So the weight bearing progression, we talked about this a lot. So you're on crutches initially. Yeah. And you were partial weight bearing. And so we talked about using a set of home scales, just a set of old school manual scales, and starting to work out, because you'll often get this. Surgeons will say, oh, you can do 10% weight bearing. And you're like, what the hell is 10% of my? So we literally said to you, okay, get a set of scales, work out what you weigh, and then get a book the same height as that set of scales. And then put your affected leg on the scale, your unaffected leg on the book, and start to work out what that 10% of weight is. And you were like, okay, I can do that. And so you started to use a very unsophisticated form of biofeedback to work out what that 10% was, and then start to judge that in terms of applying that amount of weight whilst using the crutches. And each week, I think even within every 5 days, I think we were just gradually ramping up that percentage of body weight so that you felt comfortable. And the big markers in terms of progression were pain at this point in time. Was it painful? Was it increasing pain? And was that pain lasting for more than a couple of hours? And if it was, then you were doing too much. And I think we did have that setback. I remember calling, I think about 3 weeks, probably a week after you started doing all this, you were like, yeah, I'm a bit sore.
Yeah, a little bit. And so we overdid it one day. But I mean, it's the weirdest thing about having a broken hip, because you don't feel anything. Your bones don't have neurons that are going to give you feedback of that type of pain. It's the surrounding tissue, your ligaments, tendons, muscles that were actually damaged. So anytime I was on crutches walking around and had to do any sort of like toe touching or anything, I never had feedback of pain. It was only if I had to lay down in bed and slide myself forward or backward. But the hardest thing for months was being able to roll over. Like the lateral ability of my hips. My hips took such trauma that even, till like last month, I would sometimes feel the hip tension just from getting slammed so hard, the secondary impact through the body, the shockwave. So it was really amazing not to have a lot of actual pain. And if I did have pain, it was always through like a muscle tremor then it was like getting stabbed repeatedly in the injury zone. Like that was the worst part. But after that period after a couple of weeks, like I was just avoiding any of those at all costs. And I even used this PEMF foot pad. And that absolutely, the day after I used that, I didn't have any muscle spasms anymore. It was the craziest thing. It like just totally calmed down my nervous system a bit on that left leg. It was amazing.
PEMF, can you just go into that a little bit more?
Yeah. And so it hits your body with thousands of frequencies with current, and you can feel the heat building up through the ankle to the calf. And you can even, like if you were to measure it at your shoulder with like a device, you could see the current going through you. And everything in your body, in my opinion, it's frequency. All your cells, they all have a frequency and a vibration. And erratic frequencies are because damaged cells they're not in tune with how they should be operating. And so for some reason, this device, it sent all those frequencies up through my body. And I did that probably like every other day for about, 20 minutes. This nice guy let me borrow it, and now he's gone. He's like the guardian angel of my leg. So like it helped a ton, man. PEMF it's I forget the
What's the
P, but
product?
this one, shoot, I don't remember the name. I'm not sponsored by him, so I'm not going to even worry about it. So,
Okay.
but it
Yeah, a
was
little,
awesome.
little outside my. I tend to stick as close to the science as I know. I'm certainly not familiar with the use of PEMF for rehabilitation, but like all things, look, as I'm sure listeners are getting their heads around, it's not one thing that makes recovery, accelerated and optimized. It's actually the combination of everything. One thing I probably didn't say early on as well, in the immediate and the intermediate stage, was making sure that Nick was sleeping really well. We talked about consistency of sleep, going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time. There is that tendency when athletes are injured to disregard sleep and good sleep hygiene. And I think it's something you can get very easily caught up in. You start watching an iPad, watching movies in bed, things like that, very late, waking up late because you're like, I got nothing to do. You were very disciplined with wake up and sleep time. And we know that sleep is your major source of recovery for anybody out there, whether it's recovery from training, recovery from injury, recovery from pretty much anything. Sleep is really the untapped free resource that probably isn't taken advantage of enough. But that sleep focus, I think, for you was paramount, as well as a very important piece of this puzzle in terms of accelerated recovery. Do you, in terms of your sleep, do you track sleep? And if so, what device do you use?
Actually used to for like 6 years, 7 years, tracked it with an Aura ring. And then when I was in Kona, I had gone for a swim and somehow lost it during that period of time. It's the only time I ever lost an Aura ring. And since then, I've not used it at all. And I got to be very honest, I don't miss that shit at all. I don't miss waking up and having it tell me my HRV was shitty. And I'm like, what? I feel fine. Like, it's just, there's a lot of value to those things if you don't know anything. But after so many years of me using it, and it just never really added more value than what I was already feeling and in touch with. So I think I'm not the prime user for that or spokesperson for that any longer.
No, I think you said two things really interesting there, because my experience is similar to yours. Aura, 5 years, Whoop for the last few months, trying to get my head around it. Does it add a lot of value to my life? No, because I actually have built the habits around consistency in terms of sleep, understanding when I need to go to sleep, when I wake up. Things like HRV, mine stinks. It's like embarrassing
Yeah.
at like 25, and it's like just gets me depressed looking at it and hearing people say they've got 100.
Yeah.
But I think so. The first point is, I think once you have built those habits around it, maybe all that insight is, yeah, it's just noise. But I think, like you said, if you're not that type of person who's dialed in, it can provide really great insights into positive habit formation, especially around sleep, recognizing that you have a very erratic bedtime and wake up time. Your hours of sleep is very poor. Whether your resting heart rate and HRV plays a big role in terms of awareness as well. But I think the sleep component, for me, I think especially for athletes who struggle with recovery or struggle with their health, or anyone who struggles with their health, I think it is a really nice starting place, and becoming cognizant of it. So I think you
I'll
made two
agree.
very, very, very valid points. It taught you a lot, but once you've learnt it, maybe it's just ongoing noise.
Yeah. I don't want to be such a curmudgeon on it. I would say if nothing else, it keeps you aware of the habits that will make you aware of like the things you want to make a positive imprint on. So it increases your level of awareness, and that's really all you need. And if you are setting goals because you know that you're not meeting them and it's helping you for accountability, that's why you hire coaches. That's why you have somebody else besides you doing some things to keep you on track. I can't say that they're worthless, and I won't, but I'll just say it helps you. But then to a point, you've got to help yourself.
Yep. No, I
Oh,
agree with that.
one metric I would say that I actually did like on the Aura was my body temperature, because I would notice like if I was feeling a little bit worn out and maybe on the verge of getting a little bit and I'll say this too, I never get sick, dude. I don't get sick. The second that I feel a little tingle in the back of my throat is the moment that I'm going to go take a shot of tequila and kill whatever's going on in there, and I don't get sick. I don't know. You can take that with you, but I would like seeing, wow, my body temperature's been up a couple nights. I've been a little bit, fighting something off, but then I would see that kind of calm down. So anyways, if I do get sick, I just maybe am oblivious.
I certainly I do like the body temperature, and there seems to be some there were some white papers around picking up increase in body temperature around COVID and detection of upper respiratory tract infections and whatnot that Aura put out. I certainly agree. When I see the temperature go up, I don't tend to reach for tequila. I tend to reach for high dose vitamin C and
Oh,
zinc.
I'm doing that too,
vitamin
buddy.
D.
Don't worry. That's what I use to back all the good stuff up. But I'm gonna
I
kill it
like it.
immediately.
I like it. So we've get through that sort of middle stage, and things are going really well. You, as we said, you had a little bit of a setback for I think the period of 5 days, and just told you to back off. Look, things are going really well. We get into the later stage now. This is where we saw an increase in your training volume. October 13. So now what are we? August, September, October. We're at just under 2 months. You're at 13 hours. And that progresses through to through to November, early November, December. You're now hitting sort of 16 and a half hours plus through to December. I think you were getting up into the 28 hours a week, peaking on the week of the 21st of December. So you had a very steady progression in hours. And with that came a very steady progression in calories. So early October, you were now up over 3,000 calories. Early November, you were pushing close to 4,000 calories a day. And then in December, when the training was hitting its peak, you were up just under 5,000 calories per day, which equates, around that 2.8 times your RMR or estimated RMR. So just for everyone out there listening, Nick was training. He was training a lot. He was rehabilitating a lot. He was looking after an injury. He was consuming a hell of a lot of calories. And our biggest concern was he was going to lose weight. It wasn't he was going to put on weight. It was, can we maintain his weight and can we ensure that he doesn't lose weight? And that is a really, really important point. If you are an athlete who is training a lot, and I'm saying anywhere from 13 up to 28 hours a week, your fear should not be gaining weight as you increase the calories. The fear should be that you're going to be losing weight, because that is not what you want to be doing when you're training that much.
Agree. I can always feel it too. I'm a little bit more cold in the pool. I mean, I'm cold anyways in cold pools, but the sleep's a little bit off. You're a little irritable. You don't want to be feeling that way and have to hit good sessions. You just got to keep the calories coming in. That's where you got to be strategic. You got to use the food planner. You got to be accountable. And the Fuel and app will always, if you use it properly, it'll always give you a good ballpark within a great ballpark of where you are falling short. And I still use it.
Yeah. And look, so everyone understands that breakdown in terms of macros, because everyone loves that, hearing what, someone does when they're doing that much training and eating that much food. You were on around 2.2 to 2.7 grams of protein per day. Your fat was up 1.4 to 1.9 grams per day, and your carbs was between 10 and 15 grams per kilogram per day. Huge volumes. And that's huge volumes of food. How did you handle that? What were your most frequently consumed sort of ingredients or meals during those periods?
Well, it's got to be easy to digest. It's got to sit well during, after 30 minutes after I eat it. So I always look for things that are just simple, like waffles, syrups, sandwiches in between sessions, shakes, granolas, yogurts. Dinners are where I would reap the benefits of all the vegetables that I couldn't get in throughout the day because I was on the move so much. So lots of broccoli, lots of peppers, zucchini, squash, tons of soups coming back into the winter months. And anytime I was in between sessions too, I'd always pack some snacks. I'd have some yogurt covered pretzels. I'd have some protein bars. Those Adra protein bars really do a great job if you're in a pinch and you need something quick. Sometimes it's lame, and I hate doing this. Sometimes I'd even have a gel on my way to the next session. I want to eat something, I just don't have time. So I'll just have a gel and get to the next session, get done, and then consume a ton.
I don't look. I understand the mentality of that. It's like, oh, I don't want to have a gel here. Yet I think again, the specificity of someone like you who is bouncing from early swim to an early track session to a bike session, and you have limited time in between, and it is a calorie game for you. It is literally just, how can I get these calories? Look, you're using a formulated sports supplement that delivers an exact amount of carbohydrates and calories. I don't have a problem with that in that particular use case because it's warranted. I do have a problem with that when people get a bit lazy and go, I'm going to have a gel instead of maybe having a banana or something as a snack, because it's completely different in terms of horses for courses. So
yeah.
Don't be hard on yourself, mate. If you need to use, I imagine you're smashing back precision and whatnot.
Yeah.
If you're using that in between, and again, you're in the car, you're having a precision gel or a couple of them. It's not like it knows, oh, you're in a rest period, and then it sort of transitions, as you said. It's like your body doesn't, there's not a midline there. You have those gels and you go straight into the session. It all adds up to help you. And that ease of digestibility, especially if you're going into a hard session with minimal rest, those types of products can be absolutely paramount to your success. So, yeah, I don't have an issue with it.
Thank you.
Final clearance. You saw the surgeon. What was the last time you saw him, and what did he say?
It might have been late October, and I didn't even go to the very, very last one because it was done. I was walking, I'd already come back from Kona. I'd left my cane in Kona. The water healed me, swimming around there and just having the energy. I swear it did. And it was I think a week later, I got the lever movement, treadmill assisted, suspension trainer. And I started doing walking and jogging on that. And so, even throughout that, I was doing some light aqua jogging just to make sure light impact, even touch points at the shallow end of the pool. So surgeon and everybody was still great. And I was checking in with you often. We had a lot of ideas bouncing everywhere. And, it just made me feel good because there was a couple renowned spinal surgeons who reached out to me during my initial, they had gotten wind that I wasn't going to get surgery, and they ripped me a new one. They're like, you're foolish for thinking that any athlete, it was a pro NFL player, I'd be putting those pins in you right now. You have no idea the risk you're putting yourself through. So I really felt good that I listened to my body. I've always been really good at listening to my gut, and I'm not telling anybody else to take the same route I am. I just want you to know, you can heal yourself with a great attitude, a great team around you. And there's not just one prescription for your rehabilitation. There's so many great opportunities for you to learn a lot, to make some good decisions about how you feel, and to just live a great life during the process. That was the best part. I learned a lot, I made great friends, and I had a good time. So the final clearance, I had made that decision on my own.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough, mate. I think, it's always the athlete's choice, and you guide it by, the best information you've got. I think what we always said, though, from word go, was that if at any point this isn't going right, then you need to consider having surgery. And so there were the objective markers. Obviously in the early stages, pain is a big one, the x-rays and the scans, and then progression in terms of weight bearing ability. In the final stages, you talk about taking advice. I remember I said, how's the stationary bike going? How's the trainer? And you were like, yeah,
Yeah, I forgot about that.
yeah.
I was like, don't check my Instagram story.
Yeah, you were like, and then I check your Instagram and you're out there riding a bloody bike. And I'm like, mate, don't do that. I'm like, I get it. You want to be outdoors. You want to feel free and that. I'm not worried about your bike handling ability. I'm worried about your ability to stop quickly. If you fall off that bike, you will refracture your hip. And you were like, oh, yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. So it was back to the trainer, a lot more time on the trainer, adjusting the seat height to make sure you felt very comfortable. But it's one thing I really will be very pushy on, especially as athletes rehabilitate back from these types of injuries, lower limb injuries. Use the trainer because it's safe. Not that it's any better in terms of applying load or anything like that. It's just safe. You're in your garage, you're in your room, you can watch Netflix. There's no cars coming at you. There's no people. There's no debris. The last thing you need to do is come off your bike because of some stupid idiot or something, a piece of rubbish being left on the bike and you coming off, and then it undoes all the good work. And I think you took that to heart at that point in time. I don't get angry or upset too often, but I was like,
no, you were right. You were right. And I'm never too humble to not listen. And I did, and it was a great idea. And then November 7th, I did a 500 time trial in the pool and I went 5:28 for 500 yards. It felt so good to just not have lost a ton of fitness. I didn't lose a ton of fitness. That was the best part. Really didn't.
Well, you don't have to. Again, come back to that principle. And that's what I think got you really excited early on when we had this discussion around how do we get you back to full health and rehabilitate this hip. It was like, well, let's keep training. We knew that you weren't going to be lying in bed for 7 weeks, which unfortunately so many people make that mistake. Oh, I've broken my leg. I'm just going to lie there and just atrophy the hell out of my body and my lungs. You were like, nah, what can I do? So we kept you active immediately. And that's, within reason. You're running. I know this was something you were like, man, I want to get back to running. And we said like, okay, how's your single leg squat? We always use in rugby and everything else, we always use single leg squats as a marker. We start with like single leg 45 degrees, single leg squats progression to 90 degrees. You were like, yep, I can do that. You progressed from the 30 degree to 45 to 90 degree box squats, single leg, no pain. We talked about skipping and contacts and you were like, I can skip. That's great. We started introducing small plyometric contacts. You were counting the number of contacts and building that up to hundreds before going, and then you moved into the treadmill with the lever.
Don't forget this key. Don't forget the key part. You said if you can go up 2 stairs at a time, that is a key indicator that you are likely able to do some jogging, and that's really what I waited for.
Yeah, and I remember you were like 2 stairs at a time. I can do that, and then you were like, I can't do that yet.
Yep, not yet.
and you kept testing it, and the good thing about that, like, okay, is it reliable? It seems to be fairly reliable in that, again, I can't quote any particular studies, but it was certainly reliable in terms of anecdotally, athletes who could do 2 at a time and then meet a couple of those other objective markers like single leg squatting, skipping, and that, a safe return to running. Is it valid and is it going to actually stop you from maybe getting injured or re-injuring yourself? No, I can't say that 100%. It's not going to be like, yes, you can go up 2 stairs at a time and down 2 stairs at a time and therefore you're never going to injure your hip again. No, that's not going to happen. But it's a useful when you were like, okay, well, that's what I'm going to focus on. And that's what we did. So you got back to treadmill running. How was it with the lever the first time?
It wasn't bad. I mean, honestly, didn't have a lot of pain. It felt really nice to get some range of motion again, since that was the number one thing that was kind of restricted was, right and left side, the imbalance. And honestly, still now, the biggest problem I'm dealing with after this injury isn't have anything to do with my broken side of my body. It's the healthy side that was doing all of the heavy lifting up and down from the couch over and over, all the single leg balancing. My right hip flexors, they get incredibly tight when I go to run now. And so that's been the lever's been helping me a lot with that. But when I go outside and run, I've had a couple sessions where I've been able to run like 5:15 pace or 5:30 pace for an 800, but I can only get a few of those in because the range of motion of my right hip, the non-injured hip, really was restricted because of all the heavy overloading over time. So I've really had to find that balance, and we're finally getting to where it's feeling a little bit better with some shockwave therapy, some acupuncture. My psoas in iliacus area was really tight. So that's been the hardest part. Isn't the injury, it's the byproduct of all the systems compensating for the injury.
Yeah, and it's a really good point you make there is sometimes people mistake a lack of pain as full return to function. And just because pain is gone doesn't mean that altered movements, biomechanics, strength, and everything else will return miraculously. So, like what you're hinting at is there probably still is some imbalances, like the impacted leg, the hip flexors on that side may still be weaker than the other side. So there is this compensation. The hip abductors, the lateral sort of stabilizers. Again, you mentioned that you had a lot of pain rolling over and that feeling. Again, working on those lateral stabilizers, and that takes time. Building strength, building muscle takes weeks and weeks. So whilst Nick is returning to play, he's back to full function in terms of swim, bike, run, weights. He's not yet back to full competition. And that full competition will continue to evolve over the weeks and months as he builds back full strength, full range of motion, full function through the impacted side versus the other side. Mate, and you're back. I mean, you did Cozumel camp with the team. You're back running, swimming, biking. You're doing all that. What's the next race? Have you got your eyes set on anything?
Yeah, I've signed up for Oceanside. We'll have a huge event there for the team. We'll have representation for all of our partners. It'll be my first race back, and then into Ironman Texas. And then my big goal this year is to have an amazing Challenge Roth. I just want to make that race my best friend. You know, I think I went like 8:05 or something. I want to go sub 8 there. I just need to get that last little bit, and it's going to happen this year. I'm super stoked. I'm turning 40 this year. Nothing's stopping me. So I'm feeling good.
I love it. I remember seeing you on the run last year at Roth, and you just had this big smile on your face. And I was thinking, how is he smiling right now? But you always manage. And that's probably, something I want to touch on as we start to finish this is if you had to think about your big lessons learned from this injury, what would they be? Like, what was your top sort of, 3 to 5 big takeaways if you had to sum it up?
Just that you got to look around at all of the support you have at a moment's notice. You never realize all those people just in the shadows hanging out, watching you, that you don't even notice because you're living your life. The second that you need everybody, they're there. There's so many of those examples in this last 8 months of my life where I've just been blown away by the generosity of people. I've been willing to give so much back to this community just because I can't. Our sport and the endurance world is great. So the advice I could give you there is just, you got to look around and remember the people who are just lifting you up every single day. Even if it's just a nice, like, imagine the person who you're walking in the gym every day, they scan your card and they're like, you're looking great. You look awesome today. That person, they might have made the biggest compliment of your entire day. So you just got to remember those things, and you can't just go through. There's so many things taking your attention away, your time, your money, and you got to focus on the things that are actually filling that glass up.
I love it, mate. Half full rather than half empty.
I'm full. I'm overflowing all the time, man. That's me.
I love it, mate. It's such a great approach. And I think, as I said, from the moment you're on that couch to the moment you were back running, I think that approach sort of shone through the entire time, and the time flew by. From late August to you training 28 hours a week in December after a major hip fracture. It's an absolute credit to you and your approach to the rehabilitation and the way in which you managed to execute it. So well done.
Well, you did a great job, buddy. I mean, without our weekly calls, having to look forward to, making sure that I wasn't going to let you down, of course. I never wanted that to happen. I'm a coach myself, so I know people don't want to let down those who have their best interest. And I think you got to have those people close in your corner. So thanks, Scott. Thanks the Fuel In team for making this app available to keep me connected to my input and output, integrating with Training Peaks, using the AI, like just cutting down on all the human error that we just tend to lean on for excuses. Like, you're eliminating all those excuses. There's no reason why you can't be the best version of yourself starting now.
No, thanks, mate. It's you were never going to let me down. I had no doubt about that, and it's never about letting me down. It's probably more about the individual themselves, and I think you hold yourself accountable to the highest standard, and so it's absolute credit to you and those individuals, as you said, the village around you, who always, as soon as you were injured, they dove in and they wanted to support you. So I think that also speaks volumes about you and your character. So well done.
Yep.
Mate, we'll wrap up there. I just want to, say that, look, this was an in-depth review of a serious injury case study. And when athletes injure themselves, it sucks. Yet it can be an opportunity to work on the weaknesses. The key is a process and a plan to envisage the end of the road. Objective markers along the way for functional recovery are part and parcel of the process. Having the nutritional support for the injury is key. Delayed healing is associated with poor nutritional intake. By optimizing your nutrition during these dark days, especially early on, you will give yourself the best opportunity to recover quickly, efficiently, and effectively. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Fuel In Sessions. And Nicholas Chase, you are a legend. And before I finish, as I completely wrap up, I just want to leave everyone with Nick Chase's quote as to why he actually made such a great recovery. And I said, mate, I remember I sent you a message. I was like, we're going to do this podcast and we're going to talk about why, you made such a great recovery. And he goes, I got back quickly because I'm a bad motherfucker.
Yeah. Whether I always believe that or not is one thing, but that moment, I had it. I owned that.
So above all, forget all the nutrition, the rehab, the mindset, everything. It was purely because of that. So on those words, mate, we'll sign off. And until next time, catch you soon.
Cheers.